What is the biggest red flag you had overlooked because the sex was good? Pathological liar on the streets. Demon in the sheets. I see you've also dated my ex. He wasn't over his ex. Turns out he was so not over her that they hadn't even broken up and he never planned to. Doesn't appear to register a word I say, and sometimes just interrupts me mid-sentence with a remark of his own. It's almost like I'm white noise sometimes. He constantly wanted to do everything with me/for me. Don't go to the post office by yourself. I'll drive you. Don't get yourself dinner. I'll take you and we'll go together. Don't do X. I'll do it. And then he'd get upset when I had already gone/didn't wait for his ass to wake up. He worked nights and often slept through a million calls/had done whatever by myself or with friends. And claimed that he was worried about me. He found a new squeeze and dumped me a month or so into this. But in hindsight he was really controlling, and that was quite likely the start of something not so great. Jumped out of a moving car because she didn't like a restaurant in the direction we were headed. Dirtiest, most adventurous sex I ever had. Crazy in the head, crazy in the bed. She was insanely jealous and we'd fight all the time, but the sex was amazing. I managed to break up with her. Met her to get some things back. She asked to get a drinks. Few hours later, and the most intense sex ever. I ended up with her for another year. I did finally end it. After 2 months of sleeping together, I knew absolutely nothing personal about this guy. He was tall, very muscular, covered in tattoos, and drove a really expensive truck. I never saw his wallet, only carried cash. His tattoos meant nothing. Grew up somewhere on a farm. I had some My Little Ponies from my childhood on my dresser, and he told me that these were cute horses and did they have sentimental value. He had no idea what they were. That happened frequently with pop culture type conversations. He didn't watch TV, movies, didn't read. I have no idea what his hobbies were. Never knew where he lived. He always came over to my place. Oh, and he used my hydrogen peroxide like mouthwash, which I always thought was super weird. Fully convinced he was a hitman. A few times he showed up with huge bruises on his body and wouldn't tell me how he got them. I finally told him I was ready for something more and I knew he wasn't, and we respectfully parted ways. She never used a turn signal while driving. One owns a house with her ex-husband that she's still friendly with. Also, I was never invited over. 2 nieces and nephews live with her, but brother doesn't regularly. 3 wanted to get a job with her ex. Yeah, she got that job and is back with him. Shocked, I tell you. Everyone told me she was paranoid, but she was a ballerina and her body was perfect. Her paranoia was strange in that she thought everyone was talking about her behind her back, and lo and behold, everyone was talking about her behind her back. Everyone was talking about how paranoid she was. In my defense, I told everyone that she technically wasn't paranoid if what she thought was happening was actually happening. Then she became paranoid of me sleeping around on her. Had to roll. Veiled. He was totally convinced that only when it's a full moon he could really climax. Like a werewolf. Strong vibes of overestimated masculinity I ignored to get a very useful formed dick. Talking about her ex-boyfriend non-stop and how much she missed him. Also his name was Dolphin, joking. Game playing. She was beautiful, but enjoyed toying with others. Example, after a date I asked her back to mine again and this time she said no. Totally fine. I respect that. She doesn't return my call next day. No problem. Next week I hear from her friend that she was disappointed I didn't try harder to persuade her that night. When we did eventually speak, she said she wanted to be called at least 5 times before she replies. I just wasn't prepared to play that bullspeep. Christ, I'm glad that never went any further. Man, I had something similar. The first night that we got hot and heavy on my couch, she turned me down for sex. Turns out she wanted me to ignore her refusal and drag her into the bedroom kicking and screaming. No. After we worked through that, she'd constantly accuse me of not being into her. Turns out that she wanted me to express my desire for her by blowing up her phone and screaming at her for not instantly answering. She thought that if I didn't treat her like a piece of property, yell at her for anything we disagreed on, punch any man that came near her or spoke to her, degrade her opinions instead of listening to her, that I wasn't into her. All kinds of insane. Religious was all over their social media. P's. 1 cross religious. 3 crosses freak in the sheets. All her boyfriends were crazy and she just got out of prison for assaulting her ex. I was very clear that we'll only ever be FWB, and it's worked out pretty great so far. It's pretty infrequent, like 4 or so times a year, when she's between boyfriends. They pronounced every G as a hard G. She was close family. The Disney-themed bedroom. She was manic-depressive, bipolar, and on and off alcoholic. She was wonderful when she'd stay on her meds and not drink, but she was a wild, horny monster when she didn't. Good times for all. She said, "I just know I'm going to accidentally get pregnant with red-headed twins. Lol. I'm a redhead." I ignored the red flag for a while, but she kept saying it. Eventually I came to my senses and left. It the first girl I dated after coming out as a lesbian. She hit me with, "I'm still really close with my ex." Didn't like that at all. Sex was amazing. She's one of the few people to have ever given me an orgasm. We were also really kinky together. A couple weeks into dating, her ex starts sending me pictures of them having sex. She hated me and I barely knew her. So yeah, that's how I became a lesbian cuck, I guess. Broke up a couple weeks later. Also being sexually assaulted by the same person. The big red flag over her bed, with a white circle, and a backwards Buddhism symbol in the center. She was neurotic and probably bipolar. She would make up things in her mind and then they would become facts to her, which was insane. Example, we once watched her friend's daughter for a few hours. We both were around 22 or so. The daughter was like 5. I was trying to be engaging and let the little girl have fun, just honestly regular playing. Well, later that night I was accused of paying too much attention to the little girl we were watching, and she thought letting the girl have piggyback rides was over the top. She actually felt I was inappropriate, which was totally inaccurate. She was bats beat crazy. Undefined. I honestly have no idea if she was neurotic or bipolar. I have no authority to say either. That was probably irresponsible of me. I just know how she acted and how I felt. I should add also that yes, in fact, the other part was true as well. When you're 22, sex is everything. And let me assure you, she was still the most amazing partner I've ever had. She admitted that she would start fights intentionally because she liked make-up sex. Just general emotional manipulation across the board. But that was the most blatant. Didn't return the shopping cart to the rack. Alcoholism. Insecurities and control issues. Sex kept that relationship alive, in various forms, for almost 10 years. After a few days I wanted to go home and take a shower, just chill by myself. She insisted I could stay and shower there. Said I didn't have any clean underwear with me. She pulls out a pair of her ex's. Anyway, we're getting divorced. Her family was a bit of a mess, so that unhealthy environment, especially her dad who put down her confidence, would eventually project onto our relationship and had messed up her mind. For example, holding her hand and interlocking my fingers with hers, made her think I was horny wanting sex. I couldn't be casual intimate with her with anything, and it was always a something related to sex and kinks. She took my keys so I couldn't drive, and it was a blizzard, so I wasn't going to try walking 15 miles home. But yeah, I spent 4 days as a mostly willing sex slave. Fellas, don't put your dick in crazy. I caught her doing meth in my bathroom. Turns out she was a tweaker. She was really hot though, and really into me, and kept putting on all kinds of moves on me, and I was drunk. Eventually I caved. No Richards. She bragged about humiliating a stripper until he cried. And also humiliating a young German boy by promising him sex if he masturbated in front of her and her friends, then making fun of him, until he cried. Unemployed 33-year-old man who lived and still does in his mom's basement, and had no plans on leaving or bettering himself in any way, shape, or form. Her drinking. But to be fair, she used to be a stripper down in Myrtle Beach. Can you blame me? He was a narcissist, horrible boyfriend material. But peep, the sex was great. So great. Hard to choose the biggest. But it's between having her dumbass friends go through my FB friends list looking for women I could have potentially cheated on her with, or having someone hack my FB looking to see what girls' pictures I liked, or overall immaturity. I was 23 at the time. She was 19. Incest is really a thing. This is just a very generic one, but I had not learned this lesson before. Constantly talked speep about her ex. Never a good sign. She gave me COVID and I got really sick, and then ghosted me. Her mom and dad had been married 16 times between them. 7/9 split, respectively. Dude had a missing tooth from military accident, bazooka shell, NASCAR flags, and super soft skin. One of these things is not like the others. Best 3 months of sex ever, but he had no problems ghosting me until he was ready to shag again. I finally had enough of being a booty call and found a very nice guy. He got really apologetic about it and decided that I was girlfriend material when he found out. Too little too. Shagging that man laid down on me was masterful. He constant told me that if I were to get pregnant, he would beat the baby out of me. And he said he had no problem doing it even if it killed me. Joke's on him. I can't get pregnant even if I wanted to. Or that he claimed to be a gamer guy, but refused to play Minecraft even on survival. And in my book that just makes you a wimp. Extreme, untreated bipolar disorder and depression. All the little lies about inconsequential things. She was a Nazi. It was literally a red flag, with a swastika. Undefined. Crazy, crazy family. Going through my FB messages while I was at work, finding a conversation with a previous ex. This conversation took place before I had even met this current guy. Then messaging him pretending to be me to ask when the last time we had sex was. Then when the ex truthfully said it had been over a year, I had only been with this new guy for like 6 months. Today I learned Elle accused me of cheating, badgered me to the point that I was sobbing, then didn't even apologize when I showed him that all previous conversations with the ex were timestamped from before I met the current guy. Oh, and did I mention he did this before we were supposed to go visit my family? Turned out him not wanting to visit my family would become a common theme, which resulted in me seeing my family less as well. The sex wasn't even that great. He was super selfish and didn't think women needed to orgasm. I stayed with that feep for 3 feeping years. And he liked masturbating to extremely young girls like 14 years old. Really don't know what I ever saw in him or why I never left. He ended up dumping me, which sucked at the time, but I've come to realize that breakup was the best thing to ever happen to me. He had a girlfriend. He had deep family trauma and a lot of mental health issues that he refused to go to therapy for, even when I told him that there's nothing wrong with going back to therapy, and that he should be in therapy, which eventually drove me down into depression and even started getting symptoms of shared psychosis to a degree. Being on the run from the Yakuza. No, I am not joking. Stalking me to my home. She loved being the center of attention, particularly with guys. She claimed to be a werewolf. She wouldn't listen when I told her enough. Sort of in bed out of bed red flag. As a man close to 40, sex is way higher quality and much less quantity usually. Add to it kids, a career, and the drastic increase in the need for sleep at this age, and sleep seems more appetizing than a romp at bedtime more often. Went on a date with this woman and things were fun. We end up going back to mine and peep like high schoolers. We fall asleep and I wake up about 3 a.m. to her going down on my now very sore self. I'm kinda sore and I need to work in the morning. Let's try again in the morning. Nothing. She keeps going, so I say it again a bit more sternly, and she stops only to lay on a guilt trip of how I must not be attracted to her or I was just using her for a one-night thing. We end up having sex again and then again before I go to work. If someone doesn't listen to you in bed, they have a completely different world going on in their head. Violent borderline personality disorder. She brought over a VHS cassette. Yes, I'm that old, with a short fan film, for lack of a better word, that her family made together for her younger sister. It had a soundtrack and montages of photos of her sister. To this day I can't figure out why they made it or why she wanted me to watch it. The iron being thrown at me made it another month with her. Probably him not respecting me and my limitations in bed and trying to do stuff I said not to, but I was so caught up in the moment and in love I didn't really notice until it was too late how toxic he could be. He broke up with his fiancée just the week prior to the deed and him telling me he loved me. I was 19 and he was 29. The girl he's dating now is also 19. She was 11 years old when he and I first met. I hope she's doing okay. It's weird to date teenagers past your own teenage years. Run away when you see that. 1. After we hooked up the first time, she invited herself on a holiday I planned with 2 other friends months in advance. We weren't dating or exclusive, etc. Still hooked up a lot after this. 2. Another girl I hooked up with actually didn't want to date me, but I wanted to date her. She was a freak in the sheets but a pathological liar. Made excuses of where she was, what she was doing, even though I didn't ask her and didn't care. Hang out one night with one of my close male friends. She called me up to tell me she was busy working that weekend, but again, I didn't ask her in advance because she indicated a while ago that she didn't want a relationship with me. She finally found a boyfriend, so we stopped hooking up, which in the end was good for me, although I missed those good times with her. 4 kids, 4 dads. He never slept over. We never went to his place. He paid cash everywhere. He's married. Best sex I ever had. Even now 5 years later. The sheer number of red flags spread over the sheer number of flag holders. Yep, the biggest red flag was me. Batspeep crazy is my kryptonite. Somebody finally made me see it, and now I've been married to the sanest woman I know for 10 years, and the normal level sex is totally worth the lack of drama and general stability in my life. She'd tell me that she had dreams of bearing my children. I already had one kid and got myself snipped. She was well aware of this. Nookie was so good I kept going back for more. Never seemed to make time for me. Had to keep guessing when I could see them and talk to them next. Daughter's name is a tramp stamp. She would eat cold soup out of the can. That he had been divorced for 6 months. Turned out he wasn't as divorced as he said. And his wife was 6 months pregnant. But the sex. She cheated on someone with me and ended up getting in a relationship where she did the same to me years later. He was definitely working for a pyramid scheme. He didn't believe me, but he definitely was. It was a fun 6 or so months because I knew it'd be short. Undefined. She was afraid of everything. I'm talking everything from super friendly dogs to lighting a match herself, and had already planned her whole wedding down to which chapel and what ring she wanted before she ever met me. Drug use. We all have our vices and intoxicants of choice. Mine caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. I try not to judge what someone else's right is. However, I do draw the line at things like meth and heroin. Sadly, I found out when it was too late and I was all in with her. It went from casual use to plain stupid and I walked away. What a shame. She used to be a good person. I guess her demons got the best of her. Hit me with her car. That does sound like good sex. A 5-page handwritten banner in her room that read "No more mental illness." High dosage Klonopin script. Arms and thighs full of scars, crazy eyes, etc., etc. She used to slip into a British accent without realizing it. Sometimes it was to be silly. But then one time we were having a serious conversation and out of nowhere she starts scolding me in a British accent. And not even a very good one. Sex was bomb though. We never had a real conversation. She was batspeep crazy. The whole relationship. Wouldn't talk to me for weeks or months at a time, but then once in a while she'd beg to come over. We weren't official. I pretty much knew what I was getting into, though. Drank a lot. Still lived with his ex. Took me to his parents' house to have sex with me rather than taking me to his place. Only found out where his place was by internet stalking him and his ex. Alcoholism. That it was connected to my arm. Mama always said no one can please you better than you can please yourself. She had lots of issues she needed to work out, past relationships, daddy issues, mental problems, etc. But damn was she freaky. Also helped that a lot of our kinks lined up. Her anus wasn't always clean. Her mood swings were just off the charts. She screamed bloody murder for 30 minutes because I woke up before her, and thought I'd get some groceries to make us breakfast. That was because she got on the pill and she was adjusting. There were some other signs. She was insecure of her education and to extent her intelligence, which she didn't need to be. Had a bit of a complex over her looks because of her mom and didn't ever apologize, which she complained her father never did. My confidence was at an all-time low, and didn't speak up for myself, resulting in some communication breakdowns. We were both not in the best place. That was right after my divorce, and she recently lost her fiancé and spiraled down, resulting in a DUI. Just bad timing on both our parts, but I think we both got something out of it for what it was. She was ravishingly beautiful, driven, loyal to a fault, and always true to her word. She now has a beautiful baby boy and I only wish her nothing but the best. She had a picture of her boyfriend and her by her bedside. 3 kids with 2 fathers. On antipsychotic meds. Defends her ex who physically and emotionally abused her. This was all the same gal. His drug use and a few slaps. I drew the line when he left a dead prostitute in our bed. She cheated on her ex-fiancé with his identical twin brother. A jealous nature. It's a relationship killer. Believed in Wiccan and Reiki. Scary good in bed. Very smart. Believed in some crazy speep. He told me he cheated on ex-girlfriend and never told her. He also lied to me about the number of times he cheated on her, said it was once when it was twice. He said he wanted it to be different with me and I believed him, lol. Relationship ended after I caught him cheating on me. Was dating an alcoholic. She was always quiet and awkward until she got a few drinks in her. Then she would really open up and become a different person. Gave it a pass the first couple times we hung out, but I quickly realized she was drinking every time I saw her. I let it go on probably too long, but it literally felt like I was peeping a porn star though. She was an absolute freak. It was very hard to turn her down.